Salam, peace be upon you. My name is Muhammad Layak Siddiqui, the father of Holophase, part 53 Correction as Pattern Realignment Under Constraint. We began with pattern itself. What can be compared? What stays the same through change? The fourfold identity gave us the bones. A pattern is itself across transformations, and we can prove it publicly. We learned to measure without smuggling time, to remember without storing the past, to model without confusing map and territory. Meaning, symbols, and language became tools for pointing, not for rewriting. Knowledge systems became communities of maintenance. Part 51 built the firewall between layers. Part 51.5 protected the past from future rewriting. Part 52 reframed error as diagnostic signal. Now we face what comes next. How do we respond when error is found? 1. The problem we now face. What comes after error? We have learned that error is not shame. Error is not failure. Error is a signal, information about where our claims outran their support. But a signal is only useful if we respond to it. If a smoke alarm goes off and we do nothing, the alarm was pointless. If pain warns us of injury and we ignore it, the pain was wasted. If error reveals a mismatch and we simply shrug, the error taught us nothing. So now we must ask, what is the proper response to error? The answer is correction. Correction is the lawful realignment of a pattern claim with better supported evidence. It is how error becomes wisdom. It is how mismatch becomes better match. It is how a science that learns differs from a science that merely asserts. But correction is not simple. It is not arbitrary. It is not just changing our mind. Correction has its own discipline, its own requirements, its own ethics. Done poorly, correction can be as damaging as the original error. Done well, correction is the engine of cumulative knowledge. 2. What correction is? The ship that stays itself while being repaired. Imagine an old ship. It has sailed for decades, crossed oceans, weathered storms. But over time, its hull develops weaknesses. Planks rot, nails rust, sails tear. The ship needs repair. The crew does not burn the ship and build a new one. They replace one plank at a time, keeping the rest intact. They document which planks were replaced, when, and why. They preserve the ship's log, its history, its identity. After years of such repairs, every single plank may have been replaced. Is it still the same ship? Yes and no. Philosophically, this is the famous ship of Theseus puzzle. But practically, we know what matters. Continuity has been preserved. There is a traceable line from the original ship to the current one. We know what changed, when it changed, why it changed. This is correction. A pattern claim that undergoes correction is like that ship. The core may remain. Some parts may be replaced. The boundaries may shift. The uncertainty may widen, but the lineage is preserved. We can trace from the old claim to the new one, and we know what happened in between. Correction performs two tasks at once. It improves truth tracking, and it preserves historical lineage. That dual requirement is what makes correction disciplined rather than arbitrary. 3. What correction involves? A toolkit of moves. Correction can take many forms. Here are the main ones. Model update. The underlying representation of the pattern is revised. New data shows that the old model missed something important. The model is adjusted. Parameters change, relationships are reweighted, new variables are added. Interpretation revision. The pattern itself may be correctly measured, but what it means was wrong. A symbol was misread, a signal was misinterpreted. The raw structure stands, but the meaning attached to it is corrected. Boundary redeclaration. The claim was not false everywhere. It was applied beyond its proper scope. The correction narrows the boundaries, specifying more carefully where the claim holds and where it does not. Like shoes that work on city streets but not on wet rock, the correction says works on dry pavement only. Scale rescoping. The pattern was claimed at the wrong scale. What looked like a trend at one scale disappears at another. What seemed like a law at coarse resolution reveals exceptions at finer grain. The correction adjusts the scale at which the claim is made. Uncertainty widening. Sometimes the error reveals that we were overconfident. The correction does not change the claim's direction, it widens the uncertainty bounds. We thought we were 95% confident, now we see we should have been 60% confident. Lineage preservation. This is not a kind of correction, but a requirement for all correction. Every change must preserve the chain. What changed, why it changed, under what evidence, from what prior claim. 4. Why lineage matters. The provenance principle. From earlier in our journey, we learned about provenance. The history of a claim matters. Where did it come from? What supported it? What transformations has it undergone? Correction must preserve provenance. Why? Because without lineage, correction becomes erasure. If we simply replace an old claim with a new one and pretend the old never existed, we have violated non-retroactivity. We have rewritten history. We have lost the ability to learn from the error because we have hidden the error itself. Lineage preservation means the old claim remains visible with its original certification. The new claim is clearly linked to it. The reason for correction is documented. The evidence that prompted correction is available. The relationship between old and new is explicit. This is not bureaucracy. This is how a cumulative science works. We do not erase our mistakes, we learn from them, and we show what we learned. Think of a scientist who publishes a paper, then later finds an error. The honest response is not to quietly delete the paper and pretend it never happened. The honest response is to publish a correction, clearly linked to the original, explaining what was wrong and what the new understanding is. The original stays, the correction adds. History is preserved, learning is visible. Distinguishing correction from other actions. Not every change to a claim is a correction. We need to distinguish. Correction. Realignment within continuity. The claim is adjusted while preserving lineage. The core identity may remain, but some aspect is updated based on better evidence, like the ship replacing rotten planks. Replacement. An old claim is discarded and a new one takes its place, but with no continuity. The new claim may be about a completely different pattern or may approach the same phenomenon from an entirely different framework. Replacement is not correction, it's starting over. Abandonment. The claim is dropped entirely, not replaced, not corrected, just let go. Maybe the evidence was too weak. Maybe the question turned out to be meaningless. Abandonment is the end of a line of inquiry, not its refinement. Retraction. Formal withdrawal, usually because the claim is found to be fundamentally unsupported, sometimes due to error, sometimes due to fraud. Retraction is the strongest form of rejection. It says this claim should not have been made and it should not be treated as valid. These are different. Confusing them leads to trouble. 6. An analogy. The gardener and the dead branch. A gardener has an apple tree. One branch stops bearing fruit. It's not dead, but it's weak, producing only small, misshapen apples. What does the gardener do? She could prune the branch, adjust the soil nutrients, change the watering. The tree remains the same tree, but its fruit improves. She could cut down the whole tree and plant a new one. That's not correction, it's starting over. She could abandon, stop tending the tree entirely, let it go wild. That's not correction, it's giving up. She could retract. If the tree was diseased and threatening others, she might remove it entirely and warn neighbors. That's not correction, it's removal with warning. The gardener who corrects keeps the tree, improves it, and learns from the experience. She knows what didn't work and adjusts. The tree's history, what was planted, what grew, what failed, remains part of its story. This is correction. 7. Why correction strengthens. Science, the paradox. There is a beautiful paradox here. A science that corrects itself becomes more trustworthy, not less. Think about it. If a scientific community regularly issues corrections, updates models, revises interpretations based on new evidence, what do we think of them? We think they care about truth more than about being right. They follow evidence wherever it leads. They are honest about their mistakes. They are corrigible. If a scientific community never corrects anything, if their claims remain identical decade after decade, what do we think? We become suspicious. Are they really that perfect, or are they hiding something? Are they learning or just defending? Is their stability a sign of truth or a sign of rigidity? The appearance of infallibility is not trustworthy. It is suspicious. Correction is not a sign of weakness. Correction is a sign of health. It shows that the system responds to evidence. It shows that error is being found and addressed. It shows that the science is alive. A dead science never changes. A living science constantly corrects. 8. Examples across scales. Let us see correction operating at different scales of reality. At the cosmic scale. For decades, Newton's laws were the best description of motion we had, but they failed at very high speeds and very strong gravity. Einstein's relativity corrected them, not by erasing Newton, but by showing the boundaries within which Newton works and providing a more accurate model beyond those boundaries. Lineage preserved, science advanced. At the biological scale, a species is classified based on physical characteristics. Later, DNA evidence shows that what we thought was one species is actually 3 distinct species. The classification is corrected. The old classification remains in the historical record. The new one links to it, explains why it changed, and shows the evidence. Understanding deepens. At the medical scale, in 2000, based on the best available evidence, doctors recommend a certain treatment. In 2010, new studies show the treatment is less effective than thought and has side effects previously underestimated. The guidelines are updated. This is not failure, it is learning. The 2000 guidelines remain visible. The 2010 guidelines link to them. Correction strengthens medicine. At the climate scale. In 1990, climate models made certain projections. In 2020, newer models made different projections, some higher, some lower, some with different regional details. Climate deniers say they keep changing their predictions, but the changes reflect learning. New data, better models, improved understanding all refine the projections. What would be suspicious is if the projections never changed. That would mean no learning was happening. At the personal scale, think of a belief you held strongly that you later had to correct. Maybe about politics, about relationships, about yourself. How did it feel? Uncomfortable, like admitting you were wrong, like weakness. But was it? Or was it growth? The person who can never change their mind is trapped. The person who can correct, who can say, I used to think X, but now I see Y, and here's why, that person is free. They can grow, they can learn, they can become wiser. 9. The correction principle. Let us state the principle clearly. Correction is a disciplined transformation of pattern claims, not a weakness of science. It preserves continuity while improving truth tracking. In simpler form, correction is lawful realignment within continuity. Or even shorter, correct, don't erase. This principle binds together everything we've built. It respects non-retroactivity, we don't erase the past. It respects error as diagnostic, we correct based on error signals. It respects provenance, we preserve lineage. It respects publicness, correction must be visible. 10. What correction requires? The gates. Because correction can be done badly, we need gates that ensure it is done lawfully. Any correction must declare the original claim, which prior claim is being corrected, with its certification if applicable, the revised claim, what is the corrected claim, what changed, invariance, scope, transformations, interpretation, uncertainty, why changed, what error source prompted correction, what evidence supports the change, what remains unchanged, what aspects of the original survive intact. Lineage link, how does the new claim connect to the old? The correction must preserve traceable continuity. The old claim must remain visible. The link between old and new must be explicit. No silent erasures. Corrections must be public, not hidden in footnotes, not whispered in hallways. Visible, accessible, part of the public record. 11. What we refuse. With correction properly framed, we have clear grounds for refusal. We refuse any correction that lacks lineage preservation, silent edits, history rewritten, hides what changed, fails to specify why the change was made, uses correction to smuggle new assumptions without evidence, conflates correction with replacement, abandonment, or retraction, is done privately without public record, erases past uncertainty rather than documenting it, presents arbitrary change as evidence-based correction. Each refusal protects the integrity of the correction process. 12. The difference between correction and cover-up. This is crucial. Correction is the opposite of cover-up. Cover-up hides error. It pretends nothing was wrong. It maintains the appearance of infallibility while quietly changing the substance. Cover-up is the enemy of correction. Correction exposes error. It makes it visible. It says, here's where we were wrong, here's what we learned, here's what we're doing differently. Cover-up is motivated by shame. Correction is motivated by truth. Cover-up protects reputation at the expense of knowledge. Correction protects knowledge at the expense of reputation. A science that covers up its errors cannot learn. A science that corrects openly grows. 13. The ethics of correction. There is an ethics to correction. Honesty. Correction must be truthful about what changed and why. No spinning, no minimizing, no, we always knew this really retroactive rewriting. Humility. Correction acknowledges that we were wrong. This requires humility, the willingness to be seen as fallible. But humility is not weakness. It is the precondition for learning. Courage. Correction often costs us. It may damage reputation. It may be used against us by opponents. It takes courage to correct openly when hiding would be easier. Generosity. When we correct, we help others avoid our mistakes. We contribute to the collective knowledge. Correction is a gift to the community. A science that lacks these virtues cannot correct honestly. It will cover up, spin, minimize, and eventually collapse under the weight of its own unacknowledged errors. 14. The correction mindset. We need to cultivate a correction mindset, individually and collectively. Individually, this means welcoming opportunities to correct. When we find we were wrong, we should feel not shame, but gratitude. We have learned something. We are better off than before. Collectively, this means creating environments where correction is celebrated, not punished, where the person who finds an error is thanked, where the person who corrects their own mistake is respected. This is hard. It goes against deep cultural conditioning, but it is possible. We can start small. In our own conversations, our own work, our own relationships, we can practice. When we're wrong, we can say so openly. When someone corrects us, we can thank them. When we see someone else correct, we can honor them. Over time, this becomes habit. Over time, it becomes culture. 15. The public record of correction. Because publicness matters, corrections must be part of the public record. This means corrections should be published in the same forum as the original claim. They should be clearly linked to the original. They should be findable by anyone consulting the original. They should be permanent, not deleted when inconvenient. A claim without its corrections is an incomplete story. A person consulting only the original may be misled, not knowing that it was later corrected. So corrections must travel with the original, attached like a health warning. This is why version tracking matters, why archives matter, why provenance matters. The public record must include the full history, not just the latest version. 16. Handoff to what comes next. With correction understood as disciplined realignment within continuity, we now need a systematic way to classify why claims fail. Because different failures require different corrections. A model that overfits needs different treatment than a measurement plagued by noise. An interpretation that misreads symbols needs different correction than a claim applied beyond its proper boundaries. We need a failure taxonomy, a way to categorize the reasons claims fail so that our corrections can be precise, targeted, and effective. That is where we go next. Part 53.5, Failure Taxonomy, will give us the tools to classify failures systematically. It will help us match correction types to error sources. It will complete the cycle: error, diagnosis, correction, learning. Because error without diagnosis is just confusion. Error with diagnosis points to correction. Correction with taxonomy is wisdom. 17. Closing meditation. We have learned something profound in this part. Correction is not weakness. Correction is not failure. Correction is not something to hide. Correction is how knowledge grows. It is how error becomes wisdom. It is how a living science distinguishes itself from a dead doctrine. A science that corrects itself is trustworthy because it follows evidence, not pride. A person who corrects themselves is wise because they learn, not just assert. A civilization that corrects its course survives because it adapts, not just repeats. We are building such a science together, layer by layer, protection by protection, part by part. We have learned to compare patterns lawfully. We have learned to measure without smuggling. We have learned to mean without rewriting. We have learned to build knowledge systems that maintain public claims. We have learned to separate layers and protect the pure. We have learned to prevent retroactive rewriting. We have learned to see error as signal, not shame. And now we have learned to correct, not by erasing, not by hiding, not by pretending, but by realigning within continuity, by preserving lineage, by making our learning visible. This is cumulative science. This is knowledge that grows. This is wisdom that deepens. And it is possible because we have built it together. Now we go deeper still, into the taxonomy of failure itself. Always, peace be upon you.